Welcome to Mint, Marketers in Need of Therapy. Yes, we joke that we're marketers in need of therapy, but the T stands for so much more. Training, thought leadership, time-saving tips, tools, a team, enabling us to thrive as marketers. Welcome to the Mint podcast.
Thank you.
Today we have Kathryn Clarke. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. And Kathryn is our go-to Meta and Google ad specialist. And today I thought we'd talk all things advertising. It is your speciality.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah. So do you want to just, Kathryn, to start off, just talk us through your career and how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah. So it's probably fair to say I didn't dream about being a Meta and Google Ads specialist. I actually spent probably most of my career working in HR in financial services. So I had about 14 years. And that was pre having my children. And I think probably after I've got two girls, after I had my daughters, I think like many parents, I felt I needed something a bit more flexible and actually a bit more creative. So a lot of the things I used to love about working in HR were on the development side of HR, so the leadership, the coaching, and actually a lot of that had fallen away just because of a period of, sort of cost decline where I was working, and I sort of felt a real need to get back to that. And so after I had my second daughter, I retrained in social media marketing. And I was actually lucky enough to get hired as a freelancer by the company that trained me, which was an amazing opportunity and something I'm hugely grateful for, because I think it really set me off on the path that I've now trodden. And I did that for a couple of years, but actually more and more of my clients were asking for support with the paid side of things. I think because organic was getting a bit tougher and looking to complement that. And I was referring people on a lot to people in my network, but actually I started to get a bit curious about, actually, is this something that I could get involved in? And so I retrained in Meta ads, first of all, and I just loved it. I think straight away I felt it combined so many things that I loved. It had the data, so I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to the data, but it's got that human psychology, it's got problem solving, it's got lots of different elements to it, and there's a real opportunity to work with quite a breadth of businesses as well. So I sort of fell down that rabbit hole and never came out of it again. But now I work with lots of different businesses in e-com, in service-led industries, and I sort of really love that variety. It sort of keeps, and the pace of change, I think, makes it feel like every day is a bit of a school day, which I really like. So yeah, it's constant learning. I think most
marketers are finding that every day is a school day in marketing at the moment. Yeah. And just when you think you've smashed it, something else changes and you have to learn it again.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. So what is your biggest misconception marketers still have about running paid ads at the moment? What would you feel that is?
So I think the most common thing is that ads are a bit of a magic tap, and they're not. I don't think they're going to fix something that isn't working well organically. And I think a lot of people, I get asked a lot, like, let's try some ads, let's see if this works, or I'm really struggling to sell my product or my service, would paid ads help? And I think the important thing to remember with paid ads is they'll just amplify what's already there. So if something's not working well as it is, putting money behind it is probably not going to be the solution. And so it's not a quick fix. It's not something that you can just implement and clients and sales will start pouring in immediately. It's something that has to be more strategic than that. You have to really think about what your offer is, make sure you've got that nailed, really understand your target audience. And if something's not working already, it's going back, cycling that back and trying to unpick why that is. If your website's not performing or you're not getting that brand awareness, are there other things that you need to be doing before you spend money? Because if you don't have those things nailed, it can be very easy to waste money. And a lot of clients that come to me have been burnt because they sort of say, oh, Facebook ads don't work for me, or Google ads have never worked. It's probably because the strategy hasn't been right from the first place.
Yeah. I think that there is also a lot of ads people out there that will just take the money and not look at the strategy, and that is where I think people like you that will not do that get stung sometimes. People think, oh, don't work for me, and it's like, well, actually,
yeah, it can be really hard.
Shit, your website doesn't even work. Like, what do you expect?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly for businesses that don't have huge marketing budgets, every penny is really precious. Mm-hmm. So if they've been burnt, that can really put them off. And actually, ads can be an amazing platform, an amazing sales channel for any business if you get that right. But if you've Meta and Google, they've made it very easy for you to spend money in the different kinds of way you can advertise. And so there's no kind of rules about it. So businesses will trial and error and sort of, oh, I'll spend £50 here and £50 here, but actually that's not really a strategy. That's just sort of, putting it out there and hoping something's going to stick. And unfortunately, it's just too competitive now. You really need to be careful about how you're doing it and have a thoughtful strategy, as you do with any side of marketing. It's just one stream of your marketing strategy. You need to have it all kind of tied together to your overall business goals and make sure you're working towards that sensibly.
Love it. So obviously there are loads of updates at the moment. I feel that, especially with ads, there's the AI's come in, and how is it making you feel? Do you want to feel like you want to lay down in a dark room, or
constantly? Yeah. Yes, I think that the pace of change. I mean, it's not just with ads; it's with any kind of area at the moment, isn't it? AI is just taking over, and it's. I think it's got so many great things. Other things that feel a bit more overwhelming, other sides of it. I think for me it's the constant pace of change with the platforms. So Meta, I mean, I live in the dashboards. I sort of live and breathe them. I'm in Google and Meta every day. And 9 times out of 10 I'll go in and something has changed from the last time I've been in there. So I think from a business perspective, how on earth do you keep on top of that? It's really overwhelming. And what used to be quite a simple, well, it was never simple, let's be honest, Ad Manager was never simple, but compared to the sort of beast it is now, it can feel really overwhelming, and there's so much of it is, Meta's doing so much testing at the moment with AI, so it's new Advantage Plus, which anyone who dives into Meta will have heard about that, and they've had a brand new update recently called Andromeda, which is, it's just constantly evolving, and trying to stay on top of that can feel really challenging. So I think you've got to have that kind of resilience when it comes to it, and not lie down in a dark room, but rather try and just understand what's happening. Unfortunately, Meta and Google, they send out lots of communications, but they're more often clear as mud. So, they don't really necessarily unpick it in a way that you can understand. So you need to rely on, I've got amazing networks that I rely on that are, really niche in my industry, that, there's some really people that are really staying on top of that, and it's an amazing forum for me to keep on top of my knowledge up. But yeah, the constant change, I think there's some days where you just think, please just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Let me just get on top of it before you change it again. But I think that's just not the reality of the world we live in now. It's just going to continually change at the same pace, I think.
And I think there are quite a lot of marketing managers that I'm speaking to now that are, their managers are saying, just put Advantage Plus on, let AI run it, you'll be fine. And they're like, what would you say to that sort of question? Managers are saying that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, Advantage Plus, I think I'd say the last 6 to 12 months, I've seen some massive improvements. So it's been around for a few years. The first couple of years, I think it was, as with any new tool or AI, it was learning. So when we think about how ChatGPT was 2 years ago compared to how it is now, it's massively improved in the last 2 years. That has happened very quickly. And I think Advantage Plus in Meta is the same. It's really shifted the way we run ads now. So we've definitely moved away from the sort of targeting focus that we used to have, and now it's much more around creative. But you still, and a lot of that automation is amazing, but you still need to have somebody to drive the machine that has that human element. And somebody said to me the other day, Advantage Plus can be a bit like giving a Ferrari to somebody that can't drive. And I love that analogy, because I think the potential is brilliant. It's a really amazing tool, but actually if you don't know how to implement it in the right way or to steer it, you can end up burning through money and not actually seeing results. So I think you still do need to understand how it works and make sure you're giving it the right signals, so that and that's where we go back to, you really need to understand your offer, you really need to understand your audience, because you need to know what's going to make them tick. And that need for your creative to work on that kind of human to human element is really important. So all that automation is brilliant, and Advantage Plus and Meta know more about people than we do, and they have about 30,000 data points on every person on the platform. It's frightening, but it's amazing in other ways, and so there's great potential. But yeah, I think that sort of, you can't just switch them on and hope that they're going to run themselves and then never touch them. The need to be in there and refreshing and making sure your ads are not getting fatigued and your campaigns are working for you, rather than just, a few years ago you could put them on and let them run, and if you had a killer ad it would run for months. It just doesn't work like that anymore, unfortunately.
So what's the most underrated skill an ad specialist needs today, do you think?
I think aside from, you've got obviously the technical knowledge of how the platforms work, but I think probably resilience is probably one of the biggest ones at the moment. And I think that it lies in how much things are changing and how you have to kind of really hold your nerve when when things aren't necessarily going the way you want it to. So with the level of testing and change on the platforms, it's very volatile. It can be really, day to day. There can be no rhyme or reason why your campaigns or your ads are doing well. And I think, as always, you can't look at days or even weeks in isolation anymore. You need to be looking at a much longer time period to understand actually whether things are working, because, something can happen and things can feel like they're tipping over, but actually they're just trying to stabilize, and you kind of have to weather that storm. Similarly, when you first start running ads, I think there's a tendency to be in there and trying to tweak stuff all the time, and all things are starting to take a dip. I need to change something. Actually, you need to be able to kind of, hold your nerve and say, actually, I'm going to use the data. I'm very data driven when it comes to the ads. You need to use that data, but it has to be over a good period of time for you to make informed decisions about what you're going to do, and that can feel really unnerving, particularly when you're working with other people's money, and
they're on you.
And they're, absolutely.
We haven't seen any leads yet. It's like, it's day 3.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah. And I think the more you tinker and change with stuff, the harder it is for the platform to understand what it's trying to do. So you need to give it that room to grow. And then once you've got some of that data in, and you can start to understand and unpick it why, and there's so many metrics, there's so much data you can pull from the platforms. It's really about trying to use that in a sensible way, that you're not just also focusing on 1 or 2 metrics. You're looking at a broad range of metrics and not just focusing on the number of leads or the ROAS you're getting from your product sales. It's looking at things in the round, and then starting to, again, as you would with any other part of your business, making decisions around that once you have that. Even as an ads manager, every time I run a campaign, I generally get surprised by something. So I've got good experience about what I think works, and still I get surprised. Actually, that's not the ad that I thought was going to be the winner, or that's an ad I was sure was going to do well and it hasn't. And that's why testing is so important when it comes to ads. You can't rely on just what's worked before. You can run the same campaign in 2 different times of the year and get completely different results. And there's no real explanation as to that, other than, it's a different time, it's a different campaign, it's a different, there can be lots of different reasons. But yeah, that being able to hold your nerve, I think, is quite a skill, and it's not an easy one, and it's definitely something that I've had to try and build up over time.
I bet. And I know that you're saying sometimes you're shocked with what works, but is there, creativity, do you think it's changed over the last few years, and do you think there's things that are really working at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, I think that previously, a couple of years ago, it was all about targeting. So really understanding your audience personas and really drilling down into those detailed demographics and interests, and interest-based audiences were working really well, lookalike audiences were working really well. There's definitely been a shift, and with the introduction of Advantage Plus, we're looking at much broader audiences. So as I said, Meta's really looking to give the platform room to grow, to go hunting for the right people. So that's meant that your creative and your copy and your messaging has got to be a lot more specific. You've got to be really clear on that now and give it those signals. So it will scan your ads, it will scan your landing pages, it will look at your copy, it will try to understand who those people are without you necessarily saying, these are my people. It doesn't want you to do that anymore. It wants to have the room. But if you don't have that messaging right, you're going to find that you're going after people, or it goes after people that actually aren't your ideal customer. So that creative needs to be really important. But similarly, it doesn't have to be like that really neat, polished creative. I think that has changed. People are looking for real now. People want authentic. I mean, I think people have always wanted authentic marketing, but that kind of polished Instagram of years ago, as you know, is it's not there anymore. People want to see behind the scenes. They want to hear from the founder of a company. Things like that are working really well. And I saw some amazing results from my clients that were using that kind of content in the run-up to things like Black Friday this year, really to warm up their audiences, tell people about your business. Why should they buy from you over another competitor? That's the kind of human interaction people want. I mean, we always say that people are on social media to be sociable. They want to understand about the business, and people are a lot more critical. Well, not critical is not the right word, but they're a lot more careful about who they buy from now. People have, they're really loyal to different brands, and depending on whether that's a brand that has a sustainability focus or they have, a particular niche that they're in, people want to know about that rather than just being sold to. And I think that type of content from an ads perspective, while you might not necessarily think, oh, we're going for the sale, actually that is what starts to get the sale, because people start to buy into your brand and really understand why you're different. And I think it's being able to cut through the noise with that kind of content these days that's really important.
Yeah, I think I feel the same with the creative side of it. Obviously, the young team that I've got, the TikTok side of it, they're loving. Mm-hmm. And I just can't believe some of the things that it is our personalities. That's what's coming out. It's our personalities that's working. But we're just mucking around with a bit of tinsel the other day to tune, and it's got loads of views. But
it's fun, isn't it?
Was fun.
It's engaging, it's fun.
Dance,
and I think that's the thing, the sort of that sales push, it's not what people want. People want to be informed and educated and entertained. Like, people are on social media to be entertained. You know, that's why TikTok was just such a phenomenal success when it launched, because it was fun. You know, people are, you know, and whether as a business it's relevant for you to be on which platform, you know, you go where your customers are. But I think the danger of just sell is people get really fatigued by it. And actually, if you look at the big brands like Nike, and they don't use sales at all in their social media. They're storytelling. It's storytelling. It's talking about what's important to them as a brand and what kind of, you know, and that in itself attracts customers, because, and I appreciate that's a big brand, but that is their approach just shows that actually, you know, the sales approach is just too direct for some people. And now I think, you know, we're having to think a bit more creative about actually how you get those people over the line.
So marketing managers are quite often thinking about paid ads. They're either got pressure on their managers to kind of do those paid ads, or they know it's going to work for their business. But what things can marketing managers do before they even put a penny into paid ads?
I think there's a few things. There's obviously, I generally say to people they need to have the foundations in place first. So you need to, obviously there's things from a tech perspective, you know, tracking. I see lots of businesses spending hundreds of pounds on ads without actually having proper tracking. So they won't necessarily have the meta pixel on, or they don't have the Google tag. And the danger of that is the data that they're getting from the sales isn't being directed back to the platforms. So the platforms aren't learning who their customers are, and that's really critical. And actually, in order to run any kind of lead or sales campaign, that's an absolute must. So you need to have that on. And even if you're not looking to run ads at the moment, that should be homework number one, is always get that tracking in place, because it allows you to start building up that data that will help your ads get that boost they need from the learning when they start. But I think also things like having follow-up systems in place. You know, people will go after leads and they'll get the lead, but then they don't have ways to keep them warm and nurture them afterwards. And actually, so you're just paying for people to then go cold. So I think there's lots of elements like that. But as I said at the beginning, I think the biggest foundation is things need to be working well already. And you've got to look at ads as an amplification of that rather than the fix. So if you have a service that's not particularly doing very well, or you've got a product that you can't shift, putting money behind it is probably not going to be the answer. So I think it's just have a look at how everything's working organically. Are things performing at the level? Are you getting the conversion rates that you want already? Because if you are, then that feels like it's the right time for ads. I think the other thing is really having your offer nailed. So being really crystal clear about what you're going out there with, the message. Because if you don't have that, ads can just sometimes add to the confusion for your customers, and they won't necessarily know what you're asking them to do.
As a lone marketing manager, in what you're doing, you're working on your own, do you ever feel lonely or like doubt yourself? Do you ever feel that imposter syndrome sort of thing?
Oh, constantly, yes. I think it's just the nature of the job, isn't it? I think, I do. And I think it's definitely been a journey. And I went from, as I said at the beginning, I went from working in, you know, a big corporation in the corporate world to retraining and working on my own for a good number of years. And that has been a really challenging transition. I love it. I mean, I absolutely love, you know, being my own boss now, and I really enjoy that, and I've got an amazing set of clients, but it's definitely been a journey, and I definitely still have days where I think, oh my gosh, you know, what did I do? You know, I left behind a lot of that, but actually it's given me so much in terms of learning. And I worked for the same company for 14 years. You know, there's a whole world out there that I've now, you know, been party to, and I love that. It's given me some amazing experience, and we talked about some of those skills you need in terms of not just the technical skills, but resilience and being able to, you know, and I've been able to bring a lot of the skills from my previous career into what I do now. But there are definitely, you know, it can be very lonely, and I think that's a real reason why networks such as Mint, and I'm lucky to be part of a lot of different more technical networks for Meta ads, Google ads, but local business networks as well. We're very lucky where we are here in St Albans. There's a lot of support for business networking here, and I rely really heavily on that, because I think it's really important to be able to to get in touch with my peers or other people, particularly in the marketing world, and say, is it just me, or are you struggling with this at the moment as well? And I think that just gives you the confidence that you're not just going around in your head all day on your own and sort of struggling with a problem. Actually, there are lots of people out there that you can ask, and I think that's been my biggest learning is don't try and do it all by yourself. Ask for help, because there really aren't any stupid questions with this. Things are changing so much. You can't be expected to be a master of everything. So lean on people around you that have knowledge and have experience in particular areas, and use them so that you can kind of learn from them, but also support each other, because I think I've relied really heavily on my peer networks for that, because otherwise it can feel very lonely.
Yeah, I love that answer, and that's exactly why we set up Mint. We want everybody else to help in marketing. I think there's so many people feeling more lonelier than ever right now, and actually thinking about leaving the industry when you've got so much experience. It's a shame. So
absolutely,
love that. And what is your go-to marketing tool right now?
I mean, I live and breathe in the dashboards of Google and Meta, but in terms of tools, I mean, GA4, I use GA4 a lot, Google Analytics, because obviously that pulls together a lot of the website information as well, and how that interlinks with the ad platforms. But I mean, the one I use probably every day is ChatGPT. I mean, it's really made, the time. I think the benefits of it are that it's made me more efficient. So I think when it first came out, there were so many people worrying about, is this going to replace me? Is this, particularly in the marketing world, because it can do so much. The functionality is amazing, and it's only going to get better. But I look at it sort of as the second brain that never gets tired. It's sort of an extension to my team, but I think it still needs that kind of, I still need to drive it, but that, it has been a hugely beneficial tool for me, and one that I've come to rely on quite heavily, to the point where when it goes down, I do have a little internal panic about, oh God, what am I going to do today? But for really simple admin tasks, from that to obviously the more, idea generation and bouncing ideas off, when you do work alone, it is, and it was almost like I've come to think of ChatGPT as a person, as a persona in my business, because it knows me so well now, and it really understands the type of business I'm running. So from that perspective, it's been a really invaluable tool. I feel like I'm still learning from it every day, and it's that's not going to stop, I don't think. But I'm really amazed by how it's changed. And when I think back to just literally 12 months ago, where I probably didn't use it, it's once or twice a week maybe. Now it's like every day I'm in there using it, and I think it's.
It'll be interesting to see when I know the search engine's on the Macs, but it's now when it comes out, it'll be interesting to see, because you can then be searching. I keep saying Googling it, but you won't be Googling it. Searching through that, and then it's you've got the tool there as well. So I just think it's a whole new level.
Yeah, so. I think if you jump ahead a couple of years, well, even 6 months potentially, how that's going to look is going to look really different. So it's a really exciting journey to be part of, but it's equally frightening and exciting at the same time, I think, because it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. So what part of marketing is putting you in therapy right now, Kathryn?
I think the pace of change is really unnerving. I think the constant need to stay. I mean, obviously, doing what I do, I want to be at the forefront of ads. I want to know what's going on. I want to know the changes that are coming, so that I can really support my clients with that. But that can feel really overwhelming at the moment, because I think, as I said, every time I go in there, something seems to change. So it's not putting me off. I love it. I enjoy it. But it does, again, it comes back to that resilience. I think you've got to be able to hold your nerve and say, okay, something else has changed. How am I going to get on top of that? What do I need to understand that? And quite often it's about getting your hands dirty, isn't it? Getting in there and having a play and seeing. But yeah, I definitely think that the constant changes on the platforms is definitely something I struggle with, and I know a lot of my clients struggle with. And as I say, if they're not in it every day, if they go weeks and months without being in there, or they never go in there at all, trying to understand it can be really tricky. So yeah, that and I think probably the lack of support from the platforms as well. I know a lot of people get really frustrated with the lack of support from Meta and Google. They're really happy to take your money, but actually when you have a problem, it can be really difficult to speak to a human being and try and resolve things. So that
shut
is
down an account for no reason.
yeah,
Like, what's happened?
exactly.
Oh, sorry.
And particularly when you think, I mean, I've had clients who have had their accounts hacked, lost lots of money. And that's frightening. That's really frightening. And I think, but it's been quite an interesting lesson to say, actually, I'm helping more and more clients make sure they're building up data that they can have, because being so reliant on the platforms can be quite an unnerving place to be, because if something suddenly falls over, actually, where does your business go? So even my e-com clients now, we're starting to do things like lead generation campaigns so that they're building up their email list so that they've actually got that customer data, because I think that's so important not to be wholly reliant on one platform for your sales or your marketing. And I think a lot of businesses do rely very heavily on their paid ads. And they can be a great source of success, but you need to be a bit careful about not relying on them too heavily, and make sure you've got those other kind of backup systems in place as well.
I've got one final question before we go. So for marketing managers who are juggling 100 things, feeling alone, doubting themselves, thinking they don't have their shit together, what piece of advice would you give them?
You're doing better than you think you are. I think quite often people feel that, you know, the people they're seeing on social media, or, you know, other freelancers doing that job, or other in-house marketing managers thinking they've got all the shit together. Nobody has. Nobody, really rarely. Exactly. And I think you've got to remember that, you know, everybody's human. Have a wobble. It's okay to have a wobble. It's, you know, I have wobbles quite regularly, and that's where you need to, that asking for help is really important. So going out and trying to not do everything yourself and manage on yourself. And if you're feeling really overwhelmed, lean on your network. You know, I think Mint is a fantastic opportunity for people to connect with other marketing managers and other people in the marketing arena that actually have valuable experience that can really help them. And I've really come to need that on a day-to-day basis. I think it's given me a lot more confidence in terms of what I'm doing. But yeah, I think we're all human, aren't we? You know, having a wobble is okay. It's just knowing that you've got the right support there to help you get through it.
Love that. Great answer. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have
Brilliant
you.
to talk
I've got
to you.
some nuggets of really useful information. So
Great.
thank you so much.
Pleasure.